everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Micaiah Young, and I have some guests with me today. I have Jerry, my brother, and I have Pastor Andrew Strudel over here on the other line. And to kind of give you an idea of what our relationship is like, he texted me. We were supposed to do the podcast this morning. He texted me and said, well, he didn't say anything. He just put a picture of a train. He was stuck at a train, and he had just left the hospital coming back. And I literally texted out, hey, man, no problem if you're going to be a couple minutes late. Not a big deal. I literally erased that whole text. I was like, he doesn't deserve that. And I just put do better, because that's literally the type of relationship. I didn't want to be nice at all. But do
I need to expose the conversation, the actual text messages right now, of where I was like, hey, I got a guy in the hospital. You're like, oh, be praying for him. Don't listen. You're starting out with violence.
I don't even know what you're talking about. And I did pray for him, but you took forever, like eating a sandwich and everything else like that you could have been on sooner. So
I would have been, if I didn't eat that sandwich beforehand, I'd have been real irritable on this podcast, more irritable than I already am.
You've always been irritable, but yeah, that would have been a big deal. I'm glad you did that. Well, I mean, you should be happy. You said you lost 15 pounds this morning when you drank that drink.
Yeah, that's what I said, wasn't it, Jerry? I said yeah. If you drink diet iced coffee, 15 pounds instantaneously.
Diet, yeah, it's killing you for real.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But do you remember how we met? Like, do you remember? Because I know me and him came together the first time at your church. But do you remember how we met, or any details like that at all, or not really?
I think subconsciously I've eliminated those memories, and so
okay, I appreciate that.
It was so dramatic.
Yeah, you're a jerk for that. You're dumb.
Hey, Jerry, do you want to hear my Batman impersonation?
Yeah, man, go ahead. Sure.
Okay. Get that kryptonite away from me. It'll kill me.
Kryptonite?
Yeah.
Batman.
Huh?
He doesn't have kryptonite. Isn't his weakness.
What are you talking about?
You said Batman.
Yeah, what was I supposed to say?
I don't know.
Man, he didn't fall for it.
No, I know it.
Like, what are you talking about?
Listen, I got to tell this story. The first time I ever tried that joke was on Micaiah, and it's like, get that kryptonite away from me, it'll kill me. And Micaiah was like, that's Superman. And I'm like, thanks, I've been really working on it.
I think you got at me twice with it, because you did that back then, and then you recently, like, we called, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and you did it again.
And you were like, you're dumb for that.
Yeah, I did. I can't believe Jeremiah didn't get it. I was waiting for him to say it, but he just never did.
He was so close too. He was so close.
I know, we were waiting for the light bulb.
Anyway, tell me about the first time we met.
So I know for some reason, I don't know how in the world that Cam even invited us. It was Cam Manarese. I don't even know how in the world he even invited us to that. I think he was at Happy Valley, and he said, hey, I'm about to go to this meeting. You guys should come with me. I'm going to be preaching at it. And then we're like, sure, we'll come. And we all stayed in the same room.
I remember now.
Yeah. So I don't remember how we met, though. If it was we just met and then we just started hanging out and then talking, or all of that.
Well, so hold on. You called me one time shortly after that. You're like, hey, I'm going to be up in Asheville, or you came up for the weekend. You randomly just asked to come up for the weekend.
Really?
Yeah. Remember? Yes. Because remember, that's when we got the salads from Zaxby's.
That wasn't that weekend. You're trying to add in stuff like this to expose me. That's why.
No. My hand to God. That was the weekend, because it was me and you, and because you didn't have your brothers with you, and you came up for the weekend, and I won't even tell the Zaxby salad.
You can tell it. I don't care. We've already brought it out. People are going to start asking me about it now.
I'm like, hey, yo, Micaiah, let's go get something to eat. And he was like, okay, but I'm trying to be healthy.
I hate when you do my voice. That's not how I sound.
That's literally what you sound like. And I was like, okay. I was like, so where you want to go? He was like, Zaxby's. And I'm like, you're trying to be healthy. He's like, no, but they have salads there. So I was like, okay. So we go to Zaxby's. I'm like, all right. I get like the Asian salad, like, with some vinaigrette dressing, whatever. I'm
Whatever.
like, what kind of salad do you want? And my kid like, I'll have the fried chicken salad with extra ranch and cheese bites. That's a true story. If you deny that, you're a liar.
It tasted amazing too. I know
We get back to the
because I
house.
dumped them
We're
all
sitting
on
there.
the salad.
We're sitting on TV. We got TV trays in the living room, and my K is sitting there, and he has the fried chicken salad. He literally takes those cheese bites and dumps them on his salad, and then covers the whole top of it with ranch. I mean, you couldn't even see the lettuce. And I was like, Micaiah, what was the point in us getting salads at Zaxby's if you're gonna do that? He goes, but it's salad. And I'm like, yeah, but look at what you're adding to it.
Hey, I stand by that. It was better than what I could have gotten.
I'm not sure. I think you could have straight up just gotten the fried chicken tenders and came out calorically better.
Well, who knows? Well, I didn't remember that being just a weekend that I came up there, but I guess like we just started connecting, and then you end up asking me about coming back to help at the church, and then just kind of crazy. That's a whole long story, but end up going to work there for 2 years, but we had a lot of good times though. I really do. I really did enjoy that time being there. It was a lot of fun. We
had fun.
You gave us a whole church to live in, so we had like a whole sanctuary upstairs, and then like 10 bedrooms downstairs. I mean, it was. I remember because when we lived there, we had so many extra rooms. It's not like if someone said, "Hey, can we stay with you?" It's not like, okay, well, we don't have the room. I mean, we had to let people.
Well, listen. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You came at the beginning of COVID.
Mm.
Remember, you came and like a month later, COVID hit. Remember?
Yes, I do remember.
Because we were all pumped about the bus route, and we just started getting because our bus route was like down to like 15 kids or something like that. And then we just started the bus route started picking back up, and we were like, oh, this is great. You were doing you and Hope were doing a great job with the kids downstairs. And then literally a month later, COVID hit, and we were just like, because remember you were getting your insurance license, and literally you were gonna go test. You were gonna get your state license, and you were gonna go test, and they shut down the testing center.
Yeah, I remember that.
So me and Micaiah lived through COVID together.
That's very true. Didn't you predict that COVID was going to happen or something like that? Didn't you?
Yes, 1000%. January 20, it was like the 24th. I think it was January 24th or January 26th. I literally put a post on Facebook saying, hey, there's crazy stuff going on in China. Because you know me, I follow all those weird news articles and the fringe info wars and all that kind of stuff, which doesn't seem so fringe anymore. But I don't keep up with that. You know me, I don't keep up with it anymore. But back then I was. I kept up with it a lot. And I made that post, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, get your tinfoil hats out." Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. Everybody started making fun and poking fun. It's like, "Oh, this is just a thing." And then those same people, 3 months later, were the ones that were hiding out in their basements, closing their churches down and stuff.
Yeah, that was crazy. So you just made a random prediction, like just thinking that something was going to happen, or was it like?
Well, no, it wasn't a random. It wasn't like I received. Not like I received it in a dream. I know it wasn't a random prediction. I didn't receive a prophecy. It was I was keeping up. I was keeping up with the news that was coming out of China.
Yeah.
And there were info wars and stuff like that. What people would consider fringe media.
Yeah.
They were reporting on this weird disease that was sweeping China. Videos were coming out, and everybody was just kind of ignoring it. So, yeah, it was January 24th. I made a post saying, hey, there's this thing in China going on. It's probably going to come to America, and they're going to use it. And I literally said they're going to use it to implement governmental takeover.
Yeah. And they did.
They did.
That was crazy. And I know, so I remember being at y'all's house because we lived downstairs at that time. And I remember being there, and we were all talking about, we did not know how bad this was going to be because it first came. And then we were like, is this going to be as serious as they make it out to be? And we were stocking up food, I think, and we were like,
Yeah, we were. Yeah, we were like stockpiling food.
yeah, I remember. So it was crazy. So we've been through a lot of crazy stuff because it's one thing to like not know anybody, but then you don't not know anybody in North Carolina, and then COVID hits where you can't talk to nobody. So it was like you're just in one spot. So that was a
Yeah.
crazy time together. That was a
I
lot of crazy.
remember the Sunday before COVID, we had 76 people in service.
Mm.
And then the next Sunday, if you remember, we had like 20.
That was how long
And
did
then
it
we stayed at, huh?
No, I was going to say, how long did it stay like that? Do you remember where people just kind of stayed out? Because I know we never stopped doing services. It might have been more cleaned and all those kinds of things. I think we stopped the bus route for a
We
while.
stopped the bus route. Yeah, we stopped Sunday school. We weren't shaking hands and all that kind of stuff. So we implemented some things, but no, it was over a year before the crowd started picking back up. I
Yeah,
mean, we stayed in the 20s for over a year.
yeah, that was a crazy time getting through that. That was nuts. But we made it out on the other side, and you guys are doing a lot better now. I saw a post recently where you guys had a lot of people back to where you were before, if not more so, seeing people saved and stuff like that. So you were
Yeah.
given a new building. Is that how that worked? Like, how are you just keep
Yeah.
being given buildings? You were given that one building in Black Mountain, and then you were given this building, or all three buildings. I think were given to you, right?
We've had 3 buildings given to us. Yeah, we the building with the one I'm sitting in now, we got this one 2 weeks after we started the church. And then and it was it because and I'll say this, it's churches that are like abandoned or closing down. Like this church was just sitting empty.
Mm.
And I just literally got in contact with the pastor like, "Hey, can we start a church there?" The building in Black Mountain, that was the building. That was where I pastored, and then Brother Randy Keener pastored there. And after he left, they never found a pastor, and it shut down. And so the guy that was there, who I knew, he contacted me and said, "Hey, we're shutting this down." And then we, tried to start a church there. We tried to do a few different things there, and just nothing ever really panned out. And so we ended up selling that property to another church for it was a really low price, and we didn't hardly charge them anything. Um, and then we got the new building we're in. We got that building 2 years ago this past June, and it was a church that was they had 6 people left. There were 6 people there, and a few of them were elderly, and so they were like, they had to make a decision on what they were going to do, and so we merged with them. They folded into us. They became part of our congregation and signed over the building. So yeah, it's the it's kind. I say it's the Lord, and it is the Lord that has given us these buildings. But also it's also kind of a sign of the times. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of church buildings right now because a lot of churches are shutting down. It's just the truth.
Mm.
So it's kind of like yeah, we're thankful for these buildings that are, that people are giving to us, but also at the same time, it's like, why are they being given for free? Well, it's because they're shutting down. These churches are closing. So
Why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's just because naturally that's the progression of things are going to get worse and worse? Not saying that that's an excuse, but like, do you think that's the reason why, or what do you think is the reasoning? Have you thought about it in depth?
yeah, so I think there's a problem in different. I think the problems are different in different areas. So let me give you here in the mountains. You spent 2 years here. You know how these mountains are. You know how the people are here. They're good people, but they're different.
Yeah.
They're real funny acting. And I was born and raised here. My family goes back 7 generations in this county. The problem here is back in the day when transportation was not really easy, and you had to traverse creeks and roads. There wasn't easy ways in and out of places.
Yeah.
I mean, really, there's really not easy ways in and out of places even now, up to even up to today. There's still some. So you had a lot of these churches that were built where you went to church in your community. So that's why there's a church on every corner down there. Yeah, but back in the day, going 2 or 3 miles was a big deal.
Mm.
5 miles to go to church, that was, 60, 70 years ago. You just really didn't really do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So there's that. And as transportation and all that, there's not as much of a need to go to church within your immediate vicinity. So I think that's part of it. Also, so many churches split. There's a split, a lot of the churches were started off with splits and different things. So that's an issue. And probably the biggest issue is that there's just churches are just dying because they're not following a biblical pattern.
Yeah.
I understand that some churches are small. Size doesn't mean anything. As far as I know, big churches that are really good churches, and I know small churches that are really bad churches, and vice versa. So I think sometimes we get in our brain, if it's a big church, it's a bad church, and if it's a small church, it's a good church.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get that mentality, but it's not. It's not true. I think that it's just the mentality of there's a lot of churches that are not following a biblical pattern. They used to be, they're not now, and they're just slowly seeing the decline. And the pastors, a lot of them are great men. They're good guys. Sometimes, especially in this area, I've seen it happen a lot. A pastor doesn't prepare for retirement. He doesn't prepare for, hey, what happens when I am not able to pastor anymore?
Yeah.
Financially, they don't let go of the reins, and they stay there, and they're 90, 80 to 90 years old. They're not in good health, but they're still pastoring because they still need the paycheck. And now, they have no predecessor, or they die or pass away with nobody in line behind them. So I think that's part of it. And there's probably 15 other things we could talk about, but
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I see.
So what keeps you going then? Like because I being with you for just the 2 years that I was with you, I saw
Yeah.
you go through a lot of different stuff. And I know you're not one of those people who just dwells on the negative stuff that happened, but you dealt with stuff with other people, doing things that they shouldn't have done, with members, with craziness. We could go through a bunch of stories, which I'm not going to do today, but just stuff that's happened to you personally. What keeps you going? I know you like to have fun in ministry, and you're not one of those boring, like dry, oh, hey brother, how are you? It's like, oh, I'm good. How are you? All right, well, it's good to see you. It's because that's so, to me, it's just, I get it, but like, I love people that are themselves, but love to serve the Lord. And we love to have a good time. And I know you were like always fishing, you were always doing different stuff. What kept you going, even when you dealt with some stuff that's just like, I really don't want to be dealing with this right now? What kept you going through some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there are times when I don't really know what kept me going. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know why I didn't just quit. And even some of the things you're referring to specifically when you were here, it's like, it's nobody trying to split the church. It's nobody like trying to vote me out as pastor. The problems that we faced wasn't even really church problems. It was just people, families, and things and situations in the church of just like, families going through struggles, and then there was also outside adversity. I mean, I've never had to look for any enemies from the outside either. So there
Yeah.
was, those kind of things just happen. But one guy told me one time, he was just kind of saying it in passing, but I say it a lot. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. So you know
Yeah.
I've never, like you said, I've got plenty of faults and flaws and stuff, but one thing I try to never do is like dwell on the past. Like, have there been people that have stabbed me in the back? 100%. Have there been people that have told lies about me? 100%. Are there people that wouldn't spit in my eyes if my retinas were on fire? 100%. you know but it's kind of like it's like, I could either dwell on that and focus on that and be mad and bitter and angry and just constantly dwell on everybody that's hurt me and lied about me and stabbed me in the back, or I can just focus on people that do love me and people that do want help and people that do want to learn the Bible. I can spend my time and energy focusing on them and not be bitter and contentious and, tore up all the time.
Mm.
Um, and that's really the perspective that you got to have, because if you're doing anything for the Lord, you're gonna have, Paul, the greatest Christian that ever lived, literally said, "All of Asia has forsaken me." He said, "All of Asia." And that was the church of Ephesus, the churches in Asia Minor that Paul wrote to. It even says that Demas left them, Titus left them. A lot of people miss that Titus was in that list. Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world. Titus is in that list. Well, heck, Paul wrote a book to Titus. Titus was one of Paul's preacher boys. you know. But Paul didn't, Paul mentions it in his writings, but that's the only, you see him mention it. You never hear him, complain about it or fuss. And so I think you just got to have, and you got to have a good time.
Yeah.
You got to go fishing. You got to play basketball. You got to laugh. You got to cut up. You got to poke fun at each other because, don't take yourself too seriously. You're not that, don't be that, nobody's that important. I'm not that important. You just got to have fun and laugh at yourself and laugh at other people.
Absolutely. Well, you've always been the person that just made people feel comfortable with themselves, just to have a good time and not to be like I have to be this perfect, Christian all the time where it never gets anything wrong. And I think people too, like people misjudge Paul and they said things about Paul, but like even with you, I know you were for a while there, you were a very controversial figure. And with just some different things. I know people
What? Me?
No, not you. Someone else. You remember? We were talking about the other person.
Oh yeah.
But I know there was a lot of conflict going on with that, where like people stopped, like talking to me where I went there because you were someone who just, hey, if people are doing wrong, I'm going to say something about it. And people misjudge in the sense that like I think people get this idea that like you're one way and then maybe you're just a jerk, I guess. And that wasn't the case at all. It's like you need to get to know him. His heart's in the right place. He loves people. He loves to have a good time, but like he feels the need sometimes to just like share some things when he feels like people are just being one way in front of people and one way to the side. So like what made you like what was the list for what made you call out someone or say something about someone? Like what was the line that said, okay, if people cross this line, I would have to say something to them about this because I feel like this is important.
Right. And I mean, anybody that's kept up with me on social media, I went on a huge social media fast. Like I literally wasn't on it for like 2 years. And I've never been one to shy away from controversy. But I figured out that social media might not be the best place to earnestly contend for the faith. So, being on social media, my whole social media persona has changed a lot. And I think it's for the better. I really do. Was there a time and place for some of that back then? Yes. Was it just me being wild? Yes. Um, so I'm a big advocate now for, use social media to say happy birthday or, whatever. But some guys just, and I got caught up in that. I'll be the first to admit I got really caught up in that whole, you know, get on social media, blast everybody, stir up a bunch of controversy. And I think for a time, the Steven Anderson thing, that's kind of what really dug me into the whole social media was Steven Anderson and that whole controversy. And I felt like we actually really did a lot of headway with that. We were able to, help establish doctrinally a lot of people. But, going back to the whole thing, what is it that would make me call somebody out? Well, back then, who knows? Sometimes it didn't take much. You know what I mean? But always there's really been two major issues, three maybe, but there's always been two big ones. Number one, if you're not right on salvation, which that's an obvious one, right? If a preacher's getting up there and he's preaching something wild about salvation, I mean, come on,
Yeah.
we have to say something about that.
Yeah.
And number two is the King James Bible, obviously. I mean, and that's the big issue because there are so many guys that infiltrate our circles, and I know some guys don't like that term, circle or camp or whatever, but everybody naturally gravitates towards what they're most like. That's okay. That's natural.
Yeah.
But there's these guys that get into our circles and they're not King James. They'll use it when they're coming to your pulpit, and they may use it when they're even behind their pulpit. But secretly, when they're talking to other people, or even they'll get up and say, well, the Greek actually says, or the Hebrew actually says. And, another way you could say this is, or what this word really means, the original intention of the word. And I'm sorry, those guys, you know, you have to be so careful. And that's been my two big issues. And just the compromise, just I mean, when you look at somebody, we all have preferences, and that's okay. We all have preferences that everybody does. But you can look at a guy, you can listen to him talk, you can watch how he's presenting himself, you can listen to his messages, you can tell when a guy's starting to go south. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think salvation and the King James Bible have to be two big issues. A third, if I had to put a third in line, dispensationalism, right? I'm a strong dispensationalist. Reformed theology, which, encompasses Calvinism and all millennialism and post millennialism and things like that. I think those are dangerous. I don't think they're salvation issues, but I do think they're dangerous doctrines. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I remember you being at a meeting preaching with a Calvinist, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, because it's nobody really realizes it. I remember when he preached, he used, oh man, he said a phrasing that I said, and I was in, and you said, yeah, that guy's a Calvinist, and then when I started to examine, I was like, yeah, the whole way he preached was definitely like the way he used grace and the way he used a bunch of different things. He said it, but sometimes they won't even outwardly just come out and say it. Sometimes they'll just sprinkle it in a whole sermon.
100%. Yeah, 100%. That's absolutely right. It rarely will you look at a Calvinist and ask them, "Are you a Calvinist?" and them say, "Absolutely, I am." That rarely happens. There's always a buzzword or always like a code name. And and let me say this, and you've been there. You went with me to some meetings and different things.
Yeah.
I'm not saying these guys are bad guys. I'm not saying these guys are horrible people. But at the same time, yeah, a Calvinist, I'm not going to preach with a Calvinist. I'm not going to preach with him. He's not going to preach for me. I'm not going to go preach for him. If other people want to do that, that's their business. Everybody has to run their own race, as Jack Patterson says. But I, me personally, yeah, you were with me. You were with me here at the church during that period where I kind of came out real strong and said, I'm not preaching with Calvinists anymore. It's just not what I want to do.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, you want, and you don't have a problem, like you said, like, I don't have a problem if someone stands in one specific, but at least make your position be known. Don't be someone who's just, okay, I'm going to go to this meeting and I'm just going to adapt to whoever I'm around. It's just like, okay, just say what you believe and like, just be bold about it. Don't mix in with here and mix in with there. Because that's just, I don't know. Like, I remember there's and I'm not going to say any preacher's names or anything like that, but and this is maybe just a message to our audience to not, okay, well, I'm not going to bend truth to just conform to whoever I'm around. Like if I'm at this meeting or I'm at this place, figuring out what you believe and standing by it. But I remember there was a preacher, and that was, preaching at big meetings and things like that. If I said his name, a lot of people would know him. And he would use the King James at big meetings, but then in private he was with guys and spending time with a bunch of guys who were like, I'm not King James at all. And he's promoting them and having them in stuff like this. And then I think you even reached out to him, and him just making a big joke out of the big thing, like it wasn't even a serious deal. But he's going out like, hey, no, I'm a King James guy. But and so the issue is not like, okay, if you're not a King James guy, just say it. But it's the like, let me just mesh in with every crowd and be involved, thinking that's not a big deal. I think you remember what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, 100%. Listen, I've got more respect for James White than I do for these guys that will say they're King James, but then will underhandedly be slipping in other stuff.
Yeah.
Because at least you know where James White is. At least you know where he stands. James White's not a danger to our churches,
right?
As a whole, it's these other guys. So, and that's the thing. It's like how contentious do we want to be over? Okay, how contentious do we want to be over things that aren't clearly lined out in the Bible, right? How contentious do we want to be? Okay, probably not that contentious. On a Wednesday. Tonight's Wednesday. I'm gonna wear a suit tonight. I'm gonna wear a full suit, a tie, loafers, the whole 9 yards. A guy who doesn't want to do that on a Wednesday night at his church, that's his business. I'm going to. I'm not gonna be contentious over that though. But how contentious am I allowed to get over the King James Bible though? Right? Like, is that something I'm allowed to get contentious about? So that's kind of the thing, and that's what and that's where a lot of other things and a lot of other controversies and a lot of other things, I just kind of stay out of. I don't need to be involved, especially over social media. But two things that I'll always, there was an issue a couple of weeks ago when Phil Robertson died, the Duck Dynasty guy. Now, if the guy's in heaven, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to say this. If he's in heaven, he went to heaven in spite of his church and in spite of things that he said. Maybe he got messed up on the gospel. Maybe he actually got saved and then he got messed up on the gospel afterwards. Maybe that's true. But I know this. I don't think it is. I think he was initially saved, quote unquote, saved in the Church of Christ and all that. If you look at what he says, he was not preaching the gospel. He was preaching a perverted gospel that required water baptism as a for regeneration. So I get on social media a couple of weeks ago and just mention that, and a lot of people lost their minds. But what am I supposed to do? That's a gospel issue. You know what I mean?
Mm. And that's
So
and that's something that, like, so I know the reason why you're so big on, and then we'll move on because I want to ask you about some of your book stuff. But I know
yeah,
you're big on that issue because, well, number one, and this is like your firm belief, if you believe that the King James Bible is God's word, which obviously that's a firm stance that you have, and then you correct that, then, well, if you have God's truth and you believe that 100%, then if you're trying to change that, then you're altering what you believe God intended for us to have. And so that's a big deal. And so people can misinterpret all those things. The same thing is with salvation. If you even misinterpret it a little bit, like, okay, you add baptism or you do this, that can send, like, that's a big deal because that's sending people eternity. That's eternity that you're messing someone's life up if you get these issues wrong. So to me, it makes sense that you would be bold about them. So,
yeah.
but so tell us about some of the books that you've written and like why those books, like out of all the topics you could have written on, like why those books? Why did you write books on those issues?
Yeah. So the first book I ever wrote, and I didn't have time because I was racing home because you were pressing me so hard to get, here on time and get it started, all this kind of stuff. So I had to race home and almost get hit by a train to get here.
Okay,
So
whatever. And I love how you slowly entered the camera, like as you like said that, like very intensely.
Yeah.
You're a big blessing.
But all my books are at the church. But the first one I wrote is more like a booklet, and it's called Divorced but Not Demoted. It's a little over 11,000 words, and I wrote it like in 3 days. Like I just sat down. I'd already had a bunch of study material, a bunch of things I'd already kind of put together and different things, sermons, and I just sat down and wrote it. I just for 3 days. That's all I did, and about 11,000 words. And it was because of this controversy of divorce, because the way I was raised is once a man is divorced, if a man is divorced, he's done in the ministry. He can do, he can teach some Sunday school, he can drive a bus, he can clean the toilets, he definitely can tithe, he definitely can still tithe. But, but as far as ministry wise, he's done.
Yeah.
And there were some guys that were like, well, if you're divorced, but you never get remarried, that's okay. But, anybody that's divorced and remarried, you're done for. And that's just what I thought. That's the way I was taught. That's the way I believed. And I didn't really know any different. Well, when I started studying the issue, I got a hold of Dr. Ruckman's stuff. And when I first got a hold of Dr. Ruckman's stuff, I was still of the persuasion, like, okay, this guy's smart. He's great. He's got a lot of good stuff. But, man, he was disqualified from the pastorate, unfortunately. That was kind of the idea that I had. And so I read his stuff, man. It was so good. I just loved it. Well, and then I got a hold of his book, Marriage, Divorce, and Remarriage. And I read through the book, and I get to the end of it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a tough one to get around. So I call a preacher that I know. And I'm like, hey, I just got done reading Ruckman's book on marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and I'm having a really tough time explaining some of these passages. And the guy, he was nice about it, but he was like, yeah, well, good luck. Me too. And I was like, well, but he was of the once married crowd. Like he believed in once married, but just couldn't tell me why that any of that was wrong. And that was well, I don't want to give any names. He's in heaven now, the guy that I'm talking about. He's already in heaven. So I was like, well, okay. um so long story short, I ended up facing a lot of criticism from guys that I knew and loved, and in respect, and a lot of them are good guys. They're just wrong about this issue. They love the Lord. I think they're getting rewards in heaven when they get there and all that kind of stuff, but they're just wrong about the issue, and they're putting guys out of the ministry that shouldn't be out of the ministry. So I wrote that book in defense of divorced and remarried preachers, because I'm not divorced and remarried. I've been happily married now as of August. As of August the 7th, I've been happily married for 15 years. I think my wife's been happy about 7 of them. And so, we're doing,
I was about to ask. I was like, hey, question.
yeah, no. So, but I wrote that book because it's hard for a divorced man to plead his own case. So I wrote that book. Then in 2021, I think it was, I wrote Calvinism in the Crosshairs. That was for my master's thesis for Dr. Peacock's college. And I wrote that book, and that was a biblical rebuttal of Calvinism. And that's a little over 52,000 words, I think it is, right over 52,000 words. And I wrote that book basically as a easily digest, like Lawrence Vance's book is great. I've got it. It's somewhere.
I've got it here
But it's
too.
hell. Let me see. Do you got it right there on you? Let me see. Where's my copy at? Hold on.
Look behind.
Oh, here it is. I got it right here.
It's that huge book right there, but he got it.
This right here. This is a weapon. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know you could kill somebody with that thing.
Jerry, how long did it take you to read this book?
Like 45 years.
I never finished it. I started reading it and I stopped and I was like, no way. So I just went through the cliff note and just tried to get some notes, but I could not do it.
Yeah, it's cute. So I read most of it. Like I read a lot of it, a lot of it.
On the very end.
But the thing about it is, it's like, who has the time or effort?
Look.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So
yeah,
a little bit of a difference there. And so what I did, and I say it in the beginning of the book, is I read the vast majority of this book. I skipped a few chapters or skimmed through a few chapters, but all the 5 points of Calvinism I read, the history of Calvinism, John Calvin, the whole 9 yards, I read it. Okay. The average churchgoer, the average, Bible student may not have the time or effort to read that whole thing. So in the beginning of that book, I literally say, like, listen, I took Vance's book and I took some aspects of it and basically made this thing digestible. Now, there's some different things. I'm not plagiarizing Vance's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not just going through and just, I'm not doing that. There's a lot of interesting things in my book that aren't in Vance's book. But if you're wanting like a complete, like, overkill dictionary, yeah, I get this one. But if you're wanting a good, digestible defense against Calvinism, I would recommend my book. And it's very digestible, and it's written in a way where you could like do it like in a Sunday school class or a Bible college or like a youth group class. It's written in a way that's built, and then the latest book that I have out, this one just came out earlier this year, is called Dealing with Doubts. And that is a book on the assurances of salvation. It's a very practical book. It gets into some doctrine, like I get into standing versus state, the two natures, spiritual circumcision. So it does dive into some really good doctrine, but it's not a deep dive. And I wrote that basically because I grew up, and I'm not trying to be ugly when I say this, but I grew up hearing just some really atrocious messages on salvation. Just like really confusing, convoluted, messages, heavy lordship, like, well, bless God, if you did this or if you do that or if you struggle with this, then you're not saved. And, half of you just, half of you backslid, but you really just need to actually get saved. That's the problem. And, all this kind of stuff. I grew up listening to that, and it was really confusing. I'd see people, somebody'd come down and say, I thought I was saved. I thought I've been deceived for 20 years. And tonight I realized I was actually lost. And you see that kind of stuff. And then you have people like getting saved 3 or 4 times, and you're like, holy, why are these people? Why is it taking them 4 times to get it? And so when I started studying the thing years ago, and this book, even though it's short, it's only like 17,000 words, just a little bit bigger than Divorced but Not Demoted. That is, it's a short book. It's a short read. You read it in about an hour and a half, but it's been 15 years of stories and experiences and conversations and counseling. It has been an accumulation of dealing with people. Okay, let's figure out, instead of just saying, hey, you're doubting your salvation, so it probably means you just need to get saved again. Instead of doing that, why don't we try to figure out why you're doubting? Maybe you actually are saved. But what it is a lot of preachers love to put another spiritual notch in their belt and say, we had 5 people saved. Okay, well, it's the 5 people that got saved 2 years ago. It's the same crowd every time. So it just deals with doubt, deals with doubting your salvation. And believe it or not, that's actually been probably one of I'd have to go back and look at the official numbers, but I think in the amount of time that it's been out, which has been less than a year, it's already outsold the other 2.
Interesting. So I've read the first 2, obviously really good, but I've not read the third one yet. I've been meaning to buy it, but I just hadn't. I'm waiting for my free copy that you want me to send so I could recommend it. Isn't that how they do it in podcasts? They just give a free book and then I read it and then recommend it. Is that how it goes?
Like, hey, do we need to start pulling out the tabs
No,
about who owes who?
Oh goodness. Yeah,
you should buy 50. You should buy 50 right now off Amazon.
I should buy 50. I probably should. Yeah, you only let me stay with you for free and never pay rent.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess it kind of evens out in a way. I'll buy a book. So
yeah, you buy a book and we'll call it even.
So, well, sweet. Hey, we got it on camera. This is a done deal.
Oh, geez. Whoever the cameraman is, tell him to edit that part out.
That's awesome. Well, so I'll ask you this last question about your book, because I've had this issue come up a lot. It's people getting saved, and then because of the way they're living, they're thinking, well, number one, they beat themselves up, but then they're like, man, how did I really get saved if I keep doing all these sins and making all these mistakes? And what I said to them is, I was like, well, did you ask for forgiveness for it? And they said yes. I was like, well, then why in the world are you beating yourself up? Like, you're saying that the cross of Christ, his payment was not enough to cover that sin if you keep beating yourself up after that point. Like, it just like, and they're like, well, yeah, but I know he's forgiven me and he has mercy, but I feel like I need to punish myself because so Jesus wouldn't have to and all this. And I'm like, well, if he's the creator of the universe and he says, I'm not going to punish you after you've gotten forgiveness for that, why in the world are you doing? You're saying you know better than God. And he's like, well, no, that's not what I'm. But people get caught up in all this stuff. And so I was wondering, do you have any thoughts with that or something like kind of like a word for them for that?
Yeah. So in the book, I deal with 5 basic reasons why a man doubts: bad decisions, bad doctrines, bad divisions, bad delivery, like bad sermons, like, the delivery of a sermon, bad disposition. Some people are just dispositioned that way. They're just, you got people that they just doubt everything. Salvation just happens to be one thing on the list. They got mental struggles. They overthink everything.
That's a good point.
So, and preachers like, oh, bless God, all that psycho babble and you bless God. Okay. Every preacher is against medicine and against psychologists and against therapy until it's them or their family needing it. Then all of a sudden they have this change heart. So some people just have a bad disposition, and then sometimes it's just a bad devilish attack. Sometimes the devil's just trying to mess with you. So in that, with the whole, in the book, the first chapter, or the first one that I deal with, I should say, not the first chapter, is bad decisions. People doubt their salvation because of bad decisions. And that's probably the biggest reason in a lot of cases. Here's what second, and people say, well, if you're just making bad decisions, why would that make you doubt your salvation? Okay, well, let me read you 2 Peter chapter 1, verse number 5. And beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge. Verse 6, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness. Verse 7, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. Verse 8, for if these things be in you, and abound, they make you that ye shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. Verse 9. But he that lacketh these things is blind and cannot see afar off. And here's the key, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins.
Mm.
So Peter literally says that a man that lacks those things, he literally forgets. He forgets that he was purged from his old sins. Well, that's a man that's saved, but he literally says he forgot that he was. Well, that kind of sounds like you doubt your salvation. Well, I don't remember. I don't know. I don't, maybe I am. So then what I also tell people is 1 Corinthians 11, because I've heard that whole thing like, well, I just feel like I feel like I got to punish myself, or I feel like God is punishing for my sins, or I don't know, I just feel so bad, and I feel like I've got to do this to recompense, okay, well, hold on. So 1 Corinthians 11, the context is the Lord's Supper. And it's talking about people that eat and drink unworthily. And they eat and drink their own damnation. Not damnation of the soul, it's damnation of the body. Because he says, for this cause many are sick and weakly among you, and many sleep. It means they're dead. So when Christians take the Lord's Supper unworthily, they're eating and drinking their own damnation. It's damnation of the body. But Paul says here in verse number 28, 1 Corinthians 11:28, but let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. Okay? Then he says in verse number 31, for if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world.
Mm.
So the context there is people say, oh, well, if you do wrong, you're going to be chastened. You're going to be chastened. Because if you be without chastisement, then you're bastards and not sons. Okay. Hebrews chapter 12, we could go and have a whole another hour-long discussion about Hebrews 12 and the chastisement there. But the Bible literally says that if we judge ourselves, then we will not be judged. But when we are judged, like if we don't judge ourselves, if we don't confess that sin, if we don't deal with ourselves, then we're judged by the Lord, and that's when we're chastened by him. So you can literally avoid the chastening of God
That's a
by
good point.
keeping yourself judged. So when people say, "Oh, I don't know how God's going to deal with me, or I need to chasten myself," no. Judge yourself. Realize what you're doing is wrong. Confess it to the Lord. Quit doing it, and then you'll avoid all of this, chastening from the Lord. I don't think the Lord's up in heaven just waiting to whoop us every time we mess up, right? I think He wants us to deal with our own selves. And so he gives us that opportunity. So that's why I tell people that when they're doubting, when they've sinned, when they've messed up. And when I tell people, I've had people come to me, and, I've had two situations in the past couple of years where I've had people that I know, that I love, have come to me and said, hey, Brother Sluder, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had a drinking problem for the past couple of months. And I'll say, okay. And they'll say, like, I thought you were going to flip out. I'm like, I'm not going to flip out. I don't drink, but that doesn't mean I don't have other problems. And they'll say, well, and I'll have people who, like, they'll get involved in something, or they'll do this, do that. And they'll say, well, do you think I'm saved? And I'm like, why would you not be saved? Well, because I did this sin. I was like, okay. There's other people that gossip a lot. Maybe they're not saved. Well, no. Gossip's not what I'm like. Well, see, that's the thing. Now you're saying that there's a sin that makes you saved and a sin that makes you not saved. What is the cutoff? The scriptures never give us a cutoff of what mean. Well, if you do this, that means you're really not saved. So that's what I tell people. You're gonna sin, you're gonna mess up. It's not a justification for sinning, but also understand, forgive it, or excuse me, ask for forgiveness, get it under the blood, and move on. Because the only people that's ever going to bring it up are you and the devil.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Well, what I'll do is I'll put all the links from Amazon, or is that the preferred spot that you want people to get your books, or?
That is the only spot.
That's the only spot. Okay, then I will put the links from those books in the description then. But what was you going to say something
else? Unless they're a pastor and they want more than 10 of something, like if they're wanting like 10 of one particular book, then they can contact me through email, andrewsluder@live.com. But barring that, yeah, they just got to go through Amazon.
So if I were, and this, I know this is on the spot, but if I were to say I want to get 10 from you today, like I'll go ahead and order that. What would be kind of the pricing regarding that? Like if I wanted to hand them out to some of the members that's been struggling with this.
It would just depend on how many they're getting. You know, if they're getting like way more than 10 or right around 10, it would just depend on that. And it would also depend on which book they get.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just talk to you later about it then. But you had a question?
Can I say something real quick? I agree. The book would definitely be helpful in a broad spectrum. I feel like the bad disposition has been with me, because I know I doubted my salvation for a while, and talked to my dad about it, and had a lot of things going on, and just felt like I was always overthinking. Did I say the right thing? Did I actually do it? Did I do it, the way that I think I should do it? And it feels like, the Lord had to confirm that a couple of times, just because of me, like, oh, did I do it right? Did I do this right? And he's just like, you're good. Like, stop overthinking. And the Lord had to deal with me a lot in that, and I've had to get through that. And I feel like that book would be a blessing to a lot of people, because there's just a lot of people that just doubt, that overthink, and sometimes they got to be reminded of that. And so I think that would be a good book for anybody that would read it, honestly. And so I know that I struggle with that a lot myself. So
yeah, I struggled with it for years and years and years. And even now, people say, "Bro, so do you ever still doubt?" Yeah, there are times where it'll pop in. Not as bad as it used to. Obviously, it doesn't last as long as it used to last. But and I feel like, and this is not I'm not trying to fuss or criticize, but I feel like there's a lot of pastors that don't deal with it properly. I feel like there's a lot of pastors that when their members start doubting, they're a little under equipped to properly deal with it, and to say, okay, hey, well, and some guys are great. Some guys do it great, but I feel like there's other times where, I had a guy, well-meaning guy, good guy, I would consider him even a Bible believer. But he's like, well, whenever I have somebody that's doubting their salvation, I always just treat them like a lost person, because it's better to be safe than sorry. And that sounds really good on paper.
Yeah.
The problem is when you put it in practice, the question is, okay, well, what happens when they start doubting the next time? Do you deal with them like a lost person again? So this book, I feel like, is not just a help to personal Christians, in their walk, but I feel like it's also a help to preachers, youth pastors, and things like that, to help deal with people when they come to them with doubts.
Absolutely. I like it. So I'll put those down in the description, and you covered a lot on each topic that I think would be helpful enough, and then people would get the book to finish the rest of it. But as we wrap up today, is there anything that you want to say to the audience? It could be completely unrelated from anything we've said so far. Like, you could say, hey guys, I want you to think about this, or maybe there's something going on in your own personal life right now that you've been really meditating on a lot. Is there something you want to say to anybody like that's listening, just kind of wrapping up today? Just like kind of a word to them. I keep saying a word like we're Pentecostal or something. Like, you got a word, but
I have a word of faith that I'm going to speak into your life.
Please prophesy. Is there another COVID coming or something?
No. Here's what I'll say in closing. And we kind of already talked about it earlier, but just in the Christian walk, you have just got to be yourself. You've got it. You don't try to impress anybody. Nobody's even that impressive. No, don't try to impress anybody. Find the people that you love and trust. Surround yourself with people that are going to help you. They're going to make you better. And have a good time. Laugh, cut up. I always tell people, eat good food, make good friends, and love the Lord and love other people. Like, if you'll just do that, and I know that sounds so cliche, like, some kind of mega church pastor just ended some kind of like little sermonette with that. But honest to God, we've got enough bad stuff going on. There's enough negativity. You don't have to find it. It'll find you. So if you'll just love people, love the Lord, and enjoy it, try to enjoy life as much as possible, you're going to get through it okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Well, I'll put the link to your YouTube and all your books and everything like that. And I know you guys got a lot of stuff going on. I really appreciate you taking the time today to do it. Even though you owed me for all those years of me helping you. You've owed me for a while now. But yeah, I appreciate us being able to do this today. But
all right, now you got to buy 2 books for that.
I got to buy 2 books. Okay. So, yeah, Jerry says he'll take the other one I buy. So,
Jerry,
of course he will.
Jerry, you didn't say much. Why ain't you talk much?
I just enjoy listening, you know. Unless I feel like I need to put something or I have something I could say, I usually just try to listen and try to get it in, soak it in.
He's so wise.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There's a funny story about Jerry, and I can't remember the story. Like I'm sitting here, I've been trying to think of it since you talked a second ago, and I remembered you were still alive in the room there. What was the story, Jerry? You came up, you and Micaiah and Timmy were at the house. Y'all were up for the youth meeting or something, and there's a funny story about you, but I can't remember what it is. Micaiah, what's the story?
I honestly, I don't remember either.
I know what you're saying, like, because I remember something, but it's like the story's not, it's not popping out in my head for some reason.
It's when your dad and Jerry and Timmy came up to put that shower in. But I can't remember the story. Must not have been that funny, I don't guess.
Well, if you remember it, just take a recording of it and send it, and we'll add it in. We'll to this
Sounds
part.
Good.
But yeah, that we'll have to do it again sometime, and we'll have Jerry talk more or something. But thanks for joining on with us. I really enjoyed it. I think it's gonna be a help to a lot of people. And if you're tuned in, please share this with someone. I think this would be a great help to people who are worried about their salvation, Calvinism, just all these topics that we've talked about. I think it'd be a great help to a lot of people. So anyway, hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next one.